Hey everyone, Andrew here, and today I decided to do something I've been thinking about doing since April. It's I've been considering this actually off and on since the start of the year, because in January I did a top 5 best and worst films that came out in 2017. And I really liked that. I thought it was really fun, a lot of interesting stuff, and it gave me a chance to do something a little bit more creative and a little different with my production and the way I filmed and shot things. Sort of. At least got me to talk about something I do love, which is film, which I don't get do a lot on this channel, so I'm always happy to. And I've been wanting to do another top 5, and I've definitely planned to do one for the top 5 best and worst films of 2018. But before then, I figured I've been thinking about it and trying to figure out what one I should do. I considered doing top 5 Pixar, best and worst. I considered doing all of the Muppet movies from worst to best for the release of the Happy Time Murders. I considered doing the best to worst Sharknado movies for the release of the final Sharknado. But I figured if I'm going to do this, I should probably start with this one. That's right, I'm going to be doing the top 5 best and worst Disney animated features. I'm going to break down what my kind of guidelines and my ruling is for this, and what basically I'm only counting the movies that were released as theatrical features. That is, none of the direct-to-DVD, none of the based off a television show and then got made into a movie. Those I considered that for some of those, but I figured I'd just leave them as dishonorable mentions. So, or honorable and dishonorable mentions. But, just theatrically released. I've seen actually all of the Disney animated theatrical releases. I've seen all of them at least once. And with me, I always like to start out with the bad news. So, today I will be talking about the top 5 worst Disney theatrical animated films. Mars Needs Moms. Okay, this movie is just bad. It's awful. And like, of course, that's why it's in your top 5. Like, I have a couple reasons. First off, this was one of those motion captured, CGI'd, look, we can digitalize faces now films, and all of those films are horrible. I have not seen a single one of those that I thought was remotely good. Even if the story is good, the animation is usually god awful. And Mars Needs Moms is no exception. Every single one of the human characters looks horrible. The animation around them is pretty bad. The only animation I kind of like in this is the aliens' design. And even that's, the plot line is predictable and really, really overused. I mean, for sci-fi type stories. And I don't mean the kid gets mad at mom, mom gets kidnapped, has to go rescue kid. I mean, the person gets mad at somebody, that person ends up in danger, and that person who got mad now has to save them. Plotline mixed in with the alien species, usually who almost always seem to be separated by their sexes, which this one is, definitely. And then we have to stop them from destroying the Earth. Yeah, it's just the most cut and paste script of any type of sci-fi movie ever. It has I like some of the actors in it. It's like you got Frankie Muniz doing the voice of the kid, the body being animated by Seth Green, which is pretty good-ish. You got Joan Cusack playing the mom, and she's all right. But it's one of those ones where it's like, I don't understand why in the world this became a thing. I understand that we can show faces better as a result, but it's always it never looks good. It doesn't really do it. And I'm always hated it because the entire reason to do animation is to do things that you can't do with live actors. When you film this way, You can do the entire movie with live actors. Why in the hell do you then animate it? Just film the actors doing it and add in the CGI to everything else. I hate the kid in this. The kid is so annoying. I like when we got to the very end of it, I wanted him to rescue his mom and then end up getting himself killed as a result. And one of the weird things with this one is it's really dark. For such a stupid premise, it literally leads to death of characters. It's like, jeez Louise, what the hell? So yeah, bad story, bad effects, okay characters, except for the leads. So yeah, no, definitely deserving my bottom 5. Winnie the Pooh from 2011. Oh, this one is hard for me to put on here, because I love Winnie the Pooh. I think Winnie the Pooh is amazing. I love all the characters. I'm one of the few people that likes Rabbit on occasion, because most people can't stand Rabbit. But I think Rabbit, like, as a kid, you hate him because he's the down-putter. When you're an adult, you realize he's the conscience of the group. That's just like, no, don't do that. That's dumb. Yeah. So, like, Winnie the Pooh, to me, has always had a special place in my heart, and I've seen multiple variations of it and multiple stories of it. And this one, above all the others, is, to me, probably the worst. And I can't really pinpoint exactly why. Part of it is the fact that it's only 70 minutes long, 80 minutes long. Which, okay, yeah, sure. It's a kid's film. It doesn't need to be any set length. And I'm like, yeah, but you really couldn't find a way to get an extra 10 minutes to get that hour-and-a-half runtime that counts for theatrical releases? Ugh. And when I was having to compare all of the Winnie the Poohs versus everything else that's ever been released from Disney, they don't stand out the best, unfortunately. I think like the first Tigger movie is pretty good, but all of the other ones kind of are just okay. And this one, I think, is just the worst. It's just, the story is all over the place. The music is okay. But it's like, I watched it 2 or 3 times, and I can't honestly tell you anything that's going on. I always lose interest within, like, the first 10 minutes, and just never does anything to warrant that back. And it's like, well, I guess that's a good thing it's that short, because it's started, and it's over, and then done. But this, just, to me, is just slow and pointless and uninteresting and doesn't deserve even this long a review. The Wild. This one, I have to believe that this one was made in direct response to Madagascar. Like, they may not have, like, I don't know which one came out first. I know they came out roughly the same time. But this one feels like someone heard about the plot from Madagascar and they made their own story for Disney around it. The same way that you kind of had, like, Ants and A Bug's Life. But, like, those ones, at least there's a good, you can make some sort of argument against this. There's one of these two between Madagascar and The Wild that went on to be very popular. And then there's the garbage fire that is The Wild. Just, yeah. Like, and I'm not a big fan of Madagascar. The only Madagascar I like is Madagascar 3. I think the rest are rubbish. But The Wild is just awful. The animation is ugly. Still very early 3D graphics for Disney. And Disney didn't get really good at that until Tangled. I think everything before that is pretty bad. But The Wild is just bad animation, bad acting, just bad characters. I can't stand any of them. It's a story where the entire premise is based on a father just lying to his kid the entire time. I mean, you're trying to make yourself seem more important, but it's that thing of, like, you literally are you brainwashing your kid into doing something stupid and dangerous. And especially when you find out that the dad none of the stories are remotely true. He was raised entirely in captivity. That's sort of like a dad telling his kid all these war stories about him in the war, and you realize he is a draft dodger. He never went. It's just the dumbest, dumb plot, dumb story, dumb characters. The only thing remotely redeemable in this is the villain, who is voiced by William Shatner. Does a pretty decent job as a villain. But that's the only part of the whole thing that's even remotely tolerable, and even that I don't think is great. Dinosaur. God, this one's bad. They're all bad. Yeah, I know. This one to me is just horrible because you know what they were trying to do. And anyone with half a brain would have told them this was stupid. That said, a lot of people have attempted this. So what I mean is, with Dinosaur, what they were trying to do is, they were trying to one-up the Land Before Time. Which is nearly impossible. Because I don't care what generation you are, what age you are, or what you could put The Land Before Time on for a kid now, and it still works very well because it is a nearly flawless film. It is beautifully animated, beautifully told, great characters. It's got the right level of dark to it, so it's it's scary, but it's not terrifying, so you're not traumatizing your kids by letting them see that, but you're letting them experience fear, which is a good thing for kids to experience. And it's amazing. It's one of the best animated films of all time. And then every single dinosaur animated film that's come after it, for the most part, has tried to do it again. And no one's even come close. At all. It's like you have Dinosaur, you have The Good Dinosaur, which Pixar did, which if I do the Pixar list, you'll hear my thoughts on that one. And you have Walking with the Dinosaurs, and every single one of these is very bad. But of the very bad ones, Dinosaur is easily the worst. It's really bad 3D animation. It's like one of the first 3D animation films that Disney really tried, and it's god-awful. It's bad storytelling, bad characters. It's so cliched that it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if they just stumbled on the script to Land Before Time, erased out all the characters besides Littlefoot, and just added in monkeys. That's sort of what it feels like. It's between this and number one, which is the worst. And the only thing I can say that really puts Dinosaur above the one above my number one worst of, is that this one at least has a grander scale to it. It at least feels like it's meant to be a theatrical movie. It does not feel like a direct-to-DVD that should have remained a direct-to-DVD. Or shouldn't have been made in the first place. With this one, I think it's awful, and probably shouldn't have been made at all. But at least they were trying to do something grand. The problem is that they literally tried to just do Land Before Time, and you're not going to beat it. Sorry. It's like, eventually, in some point in time, maybe, but you have to do something unique or different with it. And Dinosaur absolutely did not. Now for my dishonorable mentions. Bolt. Bolt is a story that had a decent concept, but a very poor execution. There's a concept of a dog who is on a TV show where he has superpowers, and he believes he actually has these powers, and he ends up in the real world and finds out he doesn't, and has to find a way to get home to get to his owner. And that is a decent plotline, but the use of animation, the use of bad acting, the storytelling is just not really good in this one. It's just lacking a lot of stuff that would make it really interesting or really good. Robin Hood. This one is It's chock full of little moments that are really good, and then the rest of it is just mediocre to bad. There's some parts of it that I always remember as being great, but it's also very much just Robin Hood. It doesn't have anything new or unique or interesting added to it. Literally, the only thing interesting about them is that they turned them into animals. Woohoo! Yeah, we can do better than that, or at least a little more interesting. I'm it has a, it's a place in my heart, but it's really a tiny, tiny, tiny part of my heart because it's just flawed. It could have been something interesting, I think, but it never really had the chance to either. The Sword and the Stone. Yeah, this is another one. This one is like it's got 2 or 3 moments in it that are amazing or really interesting, and then the rest of it is just dull, dishwater, boring. The idea of telling a young King Arthur story before he became king and having me taught by Merlin, okay, that's sort of interesting, I guess. Um, but like, there's only a few points that really stand out for me. One is the them turning into squirrels and getting hit on by other squirrels is hilarious. I thought that was one of the more interesting, better parts. Um, Everything about Mad Madam Mim is amazing. I love Mad Madam Mim. I think she's one of the best, little remembered, little loved Disney villains. I think she's one of the more interesting ones. But it's a story with a bunch of little shorts badly woven together that doesn't really make a good whole. Oliver and Company. This one is just Oliver Twist, but with animals. So kind of like Robin Hood, where it's like we kind of know the story, but this one at least it's like it's set in the modern era. Having it be stray animals makes sort of sense. And there's elements of it that kind of work, but there's a lot of it that it kind of doesn't. Mostly, it's like I remember owning this. I also remember just not caring enough and just getting rid of it. So, like, it has some elements that sort of work. I like the characters. I think the characters are pretty good in it. But the story is just meh to not great. Although it is one of the few times that you just have an on-screen death of a character, and it's pretty horrific. Planes. Planes is just a weird, should have been direct-to-DVD spinoff of Cars. It's very cliched, very badly acted, stupid story. But it has a few moments in it that are okay. I really like the um, Latin friend who's trying to seduce one of the other planes, and that's the only part about it that's actually sort of interesting. But honestly, it's just the weird thing to me is that the sequel is actually kind of good. It's a lot. It's sort of like the Cars 3 of the Planes universe, where it's like you took the main characters who only had one dream, and then you break him, and now he has to figure out a way to do something else. And that, to me, is kind of interesting. If you have a little kid, I would recommend Planes, Fire, and Rescue. It's not too bad. The Fox and the Hound. This one is just depressing. It's a very sad, slow, depressing story. And there's some moments in it that are alright, but for the most part, it just makes you cry. There were a couple movies that I almost put on the list, and I didn't and not because they're not bad or they're better than this, but because I can't really specify what they do. And that these are ones that were movies based off of television shows. So I kind of felt that they don't necessarily apply because they're not necessarily meant for theatrical release. And it's not necessarily the big animation department doing it. It's more like the people that were doing the television show are just now doing the film. But there's like 3 or 4 of them, and like one's really good, which is DuckTales, and then there's 2 that are pretty bad. One would be Doug's first movie. This was after Disney got the rights to Doug from Nickelodeon, and then they proceeded to shoot Doug in the stomach and watch him slowly die, just for their own enjoyment. It's I don't understand what Disney's thinking was when they bought this property. They bought it, they did maybe a season of it, they did this movie, and they had the gall to call it Doug's first movie as if they were planning to do like 15 to 16 more of these things, and yet it's bad animation, meh storytelling, just not interesting at the slightest. Easily forgettable. If I didn't do this list, I would probably have forgotten it exists. Along with the next one, which is Teacher's Pet. So the plot of Teacher's Pet is dog wants to be smarter, so dresses up as a student, as a kid, and pretends to be a foreign exchange student in his master's school, and has been given the ability to talk. Yeah, I never liked this premise as a television show. I don't know how in the world it got greenlit. And then I don't even understand how it became popular enough to warrant a movie. It's just, and it's not a good movie. It's boring, it's dry, it's uninteresting, and it's not great in any sense of the word. And I remember seeing this in theaters. And I have no idea why in the world I saw it in theaters. I assume I was on vacation and was bored out of my skull. And I kind of wish I hadn't seen it. It's just not worth the effort. Frankenweenie. This one should have worked. There's something here that I think you could have done something with. Because you got the Tim Burton style, the Tim Burton storytelling. You got the nice black and white aesthetic. You've got the the stop motion animation, and this interesting dilemma and story where you take the Frankenstein mythos and make it modern, and it could have been something. And instead, we got this really dry, not interesting, slow movie that sadly is better done as the 30-minute live-action version that Tim Burton made in the 80s. That's a much better version of Frankenweenie than this hour-and-a-half one. Let's move on to my number one worst Disney animated feature release. Home on the Range. This movie, to me, screams made for direct-to-DVD, and then someone went, nope, we're just going to make it a feature film for you. It's the most lazy story, bad animation, bad voice acting, bad choices film that Disney's ever done. So they took the plot of Charlotte's Web. Let's go with Charlotte's Web. Basically, any farm-related movie of any time where it's like, oh no, someone wants to buy our farm, and if we can't get our hands on the deed, we'll lose it. And then they mixed in every bad plot, idea, concept that they could come up with. It's horrible music, horrible story. The villain is god-awful. The villain's motivation is greed, obviously, but his only weapon, his only thing that makes him even a threat, is that he can yodel, and it causes the cows to become hypnotized. That is one of the dumbest things I have ever said, or thought, or seen. But seriously, hypnotic yodeling. Yeah, this to me was the thing that made me realize that Disney was falling apart. And that the animation that I knew Disney for, the style, the characters, that stuff, that was basically gone at this point. This, to me, was almost the final nail in the coffin of what my childhood, my love of Disney was. And I'm sad that that is one of the last animated films. I'm the 100% happy that the last one is actually Princess and the Frog, because Princess and the Frog is actually really good. It's got good music, good characters, good story. Not flawless, but it's got stuff that works. But this, to me, felt like the thing that led to them stopping making, hand-drawn animation forevermore. And the reality is, no, probably not. It's probably just that people stopped going to see this type of animation, which is partially true. It's also not true, because there's still some times that animation duck works well, but yeah, no, I get it. And it's like, I don't want to hate on this as much as I do, but it warrants it. It deserves it. It is god awful, and it deserves to be acknowledged for that. So there it is, my top 5 worst animated Disney features. Is there some that you disagree with? Is there some that you think should have been more on this list that I didn't say? Let me know. So that's my bottom 5. I will be doing the top 5 in the next few days. I'll see you all then, okay? Bye.